watches the videos, and his garden is amazing.
Okay, good morning. My name is Gary Matsuoka, and we're here at Gwen Hills Nursery in Santa Ana. It's a Saturday morning in early February, and it feels like summer. So I'm a little disheveled this week because it's been spring business. And we got in so many things this week. I haven't had time to review the avocado lecture too much, but I'll give it a good shot today. So today we're going to be talking about the fact that we just got in over 1,300 of these little grafted avocado trees from our supplier. And generally, this is the best way we can get avocados nowadays. We've tried at least a dozen sources out there of avocados, and nobody grows them in what we consider the proper dirt. And when they're not in the proper dirt, they just rot. Now, if you go to most nurseries, they'll warn you about overwatering and drainage. That's totally overrated. The problem with our industry is that we got messed up about 50 years ago by the universities who told us, do not grow plants in real dirt. In fact, I should bring a sample of ideal soil up here. One second.
Thank you. This is the older version.
So I was born in Pasadena, and the soil there looked like this. And plants grew fine, everything grew fine in the native soil. In fact, this is what my dad used to grow his plants in containers. Just a nice, white, sandy dirt. Nothing rots in sandy dirt. You can water. So when I was growing up, my dad told me water every day, fertilize once a month. Plants are really easy to grow. But we moved to Orange County in the 1980s. Well, I moved to Orange County in the 60s. In the 1980s, our plants started rotting. And the ag department came in. My dad called the ag department and said, what's going on here? We're having root rot problems with all these plants. And they told him, well, you can't water every day. So my dad told me to figure it out because he had watered every plant in his nursery every day for the previous 30 years, up until that point, over 30 years. And it turns out that especially in the 80s, they switched from this to ground up trees. So the nurseries are told, you want to make your soil lighter because this is heavy. I mean, real dirt is about 100 pounds per cubic foot. So we didn't have 15-gallon trees in those days because no one can move them. We had 24-inch boxes because we had the equipment to move that. We had 5 gallons and 1 gallon size containers, but even those were really heavy. 5 gallons is as heavy as you can lift. It was like 40, 50 pounds of soil right there. So they wanted to make it lighter by adding ground up wood and bark. And now most nurseries, there's a lot of nurseries out there that use like 90% ground up bark. Some do 100%. And the problem with that is that it's not like this. This is, 100 years from now, this will look just the same. Ground up bark and wood will be gone. They'll be absolutely gone. They're decomposing. But the problem is that after about 5 months of use, so the research shows that for the first 5 months, ground up bark is wonderful for growing plants. By 8 months, it becomes lethal to the roots because it's now turning into sludge. And the biggest problem with it, even worse, is that it decomposes the use of oxygen that the roots need to breathe. So, the water itself, when you water from your hose or your tap or irrigation system, our tap water is supposed to have enough oxygen to keep roots alive. So there shouldn't be anything called overwatering because the water district makes sure the oxygen content of your tap water is 5 to 7 parts per million. So fish can breathe in it, so plant roots can breathe in it and they don't rot. But when you've got decomposing wood products or tree products that bark and ground up wood, as a soil media, there's no oxygen in the water. And the only way the oxygen can get back in there is for that soil to totally dry out so that the air can flow in after the water's gone, because the water doesn't have the oxygen. And that's the problem. So every company we've seen avocados growing, they're in some form of decaying organic matter. And we can't tell you that any avocado tree you buy other than from us will not rot. Most of them are already rotten when we get them. So our supplier, Rokon Nursery, they graft tens of thousands. I don't know how many they graft avocado trees every year. We have 19 varieties out there, about 1,300 total plants. And the soil they use in these seed pots is just peat and perlite. And we'll go with peat moss. It's not perfect, but it's been dead a long time. So the amount of oxygen the water it uses is negligible. I mean, if you put peat moss in a glass of water and let it sit for a few weeks, it doesn't change. The water is fine. If you put any other form of compost, coconut core, wood, bark, ground up real fine in a glass of water, within 2 weeks it starts smelling like a sewer because it's too fresh. It's decomposing too fast. Peat moss has been sitting at the bottom of a lake for about 100 years, 10 years, 20 years. Its decomposition rate is notably very slow. But you use any kind of other fresh wood product, they let it decompose for 3 months so it doesn't catch on fire. and then after that, it slows down a bit, but still, you put that in water, if you put that in a fish pond, you're going to kill your fish. Any decomposing matter like that's fresh, you can't put it in a fish pond at all. And you certainly don't want to use it on plants. Hydroponics, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They can use peat. They can actually use coconut core, but they'll stay away from any kind of wood or bark because it just, they said the results aren't good. But in the U.S., most nurseries, I would say, I can't think of many container growing nurseries that don't use ground up bark or ground up wood of some sort. So it's really going to be difficult to find. And we've known this since the early 1990s. I may have convinced one nursery other than us that it's not right to put fresh compost into your soil mix. They don't listen because they all got taught by the universities and that's their authority. So I don't trust any PhDs anymore, even though there's 2 PhDs in my family, Okay, so planting this. So we'll talk about the planting technique just first, because that's real important. So we don't like to put these in the ground right now. It's still the middle of winter. It's supposed to get cold in a few weeks. The ground is not real warm. And they're so small, you can step on this and wipe it out. Now, just so you know, they grew these, our plants come just like this. They've got a couple labels on them, just so you know what the labels mean, besides the name label. Most of them have a little Zutano label. This is when they planted the seed. It's the Zutano pit. July 22nd last year is when they planted the seed, and then they grafted them over to the avocado we wanted. Here's the grafting tag, October 2nd. So these are grafted October 2nd. Source of the bud wood is on here, UCR, the Irvine Field Station. And this is Jan Boyce, which is at the Irvine Field Station, it is considered the best tasting avocado. And we ate one for the first time last year, about 11 months ago, and we have to admit it's probably is the best tasting avocado. Not by much, but it's so good, we can't argue against it. So when we plant them here, we'll use a clean, this is a new number 5 or 5 gallons, it's really 3.8 gallons. Because we want to make sure there's no root rot disease in this pot. So you can get a used one, but you got to make sure it's clean. 10% bleach will sterilize it. Heat will too, but then you'll melt your pot. So what I do is put the name of the plant on it, the date, so I know when that thing's ready to sell. Now we expect in 4 months for it to look like this. So this should be 4 months. This should be, so in 4 months we'll stick these in the bigger pots, and 4 months after that they'll look like this. And they're ready to produce fruit. They're blooming. So on its 2nd year of life, we expect most of these avocados to have a crop. If you buy it from someone else, you know, they'll struggle, they won't grow fast. I mean, this is, you know, we're expecting it to grow 2 to 3 feet, well, at least 2 foot in 4 months, another 2 feet by October, November. And by 1 year later, we expect it to be well over 6 feet and in full bloom. So that's what we expect from trees we grow. Now, I was at a nursery down in San Diego County, and I was listening to the sales rep tell a customer, you know, the customer had asked them how long it takes to get from a 15 gallon to a 24-inch box. And they told the customer 2 years. It takes us 3 months, 3 to 4 months to go from that size to a 24-inch box. I mean, we go from essentially from this to 24-inch box in a little over a year. And I don't know any other nursery that can grow them that fast. I would tell you I'm an expert in growing avocados in containers. I mean, I don't grow many in the ground, so I've never grown that many in the ground. I've maybe less than 10 in my entire life. So I'm not an expert in the ground, but we certainly know all the tricks about growing them in pots. And I usually bring in our 24-inch box that's 2 years from this, but I looked at it yesterday and going, there's no way I can get this in here. It would be as high as this seedling right here. So it's a little over 4 feet above my 8-foot stake. Trunk's about this big. It made about 10 foot. It is the Jan voice we put in there because we hadn't grown it before. So they can grow really fast. Now, they don't have to be big. So we wanted to see the Jan voice in a container to see if it would flower and fruit on its 2nd year of life, and it did. So we know we don't have to let it get any higher than 6 feet in your garden to make fruit. So you don't have to let it get big. I mean, avocado orchards now are kept around 10 feet. In the old days, they let them grow 20, 25 feet before they cut them back. But nowadays, they just keep them trimmed right around 10 feet. They just don't want to climb ladders.
So when they trim them, do they just cut them off at the top?
Yeah.
Is it a horizontal cut, a diagonal cut?
Well, it doesn't matter that much. I mean, they're using chainsaws to do a lot of the pruning, so it's like, you know, you just want to have to be there. So in the old days, before we started pruning a lot, every 10 years or so, they would cut them down to a stump. So I had to try that. My last house, I had a 20-foot bacon avocado. I said, okay, it's getting kind of tall. It was during the drought, 2013. So I said, yeah, just cut it down. I won't be using any water. So I got my chainsaw, cut it down to a 4-foot stump like the book said in winter. Sat there for 3 months, and then it took off right before summer, it just took off, grew 6 feet, bloomed the next year, had a crop. So we didn't hold it back long. It was a winter ripening avocado, so we picked the avocados, cut it down. We lost 1 year of fruit from that, But it grew back and bloomed the next year and had a crop. So didn't lose much. We lost one crop cycle by cutting down. So that's what they used to do, but now they just keep it trimmed every year so they don't lose an entire crop like that. Oh, so anyway, we'll use our top potting soil. So this is the closest thing you're going to get to a sandy soil. It's not sandy soil. We knew we couldn't sell this. It's too heavy. We knew we couldn't sell straight sand, which was the original potting soil, because it's too heavy and no one would believe us because it's so white. So we made our top pot. It's 1/3 peat, and the rest, and 60% quartz, which soil basically is quartz. You take a piece of granite and you grind it up. Granite's pretty much all quartz. You get dirt, sand is quartz, silt is quartz, clay is mostly quartz. So our particular soil has got a lot of quartz in it. You can see it better on these older trees. The soil looks very white, mainly because the peat moss on the surface blows off. So you see the rest of it. Well, we use most of the quartz here is pumice, and then there's perlite, which is man-made pumice, which is a little bit lighter, and we use 10% sand. The bags that our company uses can't hold more weight, and you can go to a much thicker bag, which costs a lot more, like they put sand in. But to save costs, we went with a thinner bag that can hold the weight. So we didn't want to make too. I mean, this stuff works so good for us. We're probably not going to change it, although I might in the future get it a little heavier. But so anyway, we use our top pot. There's nothing in here that besides the peat moss, which decomposes very slowly. 5 years for decomposition on peat, where it's like less than a year for decomposition on the size of the ground up wood or bark that they use. So and there's charcoal in here, 5% charcoal. And that's what makes the rich black soils of the world both rich and black, charcoal. It doesn't decompose. It's wood that's exposed at a very high temperature. So last year we had smaller pots, but the company ran out of smaller pots, so I had to buy slightly bigger number 5 containers. Last year, this bag of top pot, the small bag, would fill it. This year, not really. It gets close. I mean, you don't have to go that high. If your soil level is here, it still grows just fine. But for our use, we find that these pots are a little bigger. So we'll put some soil in there first. So we want this to sit with the tip of the seed right at the level of the container, which is right about that height. Seed could stay, then you don't have to leave it exposed. If you bury it, it's not a big deal, especially with our top pot. Now, this container has perforations on it, but they rarely work. So I always give that a try first. Just as a joke, I try to tear it down the perforations. One out of 10 usually works. Oh, well, I lost part of the seed doing that, but this one actually worked pretty good. Now, ideally, I'd like to have the seed still on the plant, but it doesn't look like it was connected very well anyway. Because the seed is like a nurse. It'll feed the tree for up to a year after you plant it. So take that bag off. If that bag didn't come off, I would use this little razor blade thing and lightly pull it down the side of the bag. You don't have to penetrate the bag. You just pull it down lightly and it'll tear right there, because I don't want to cut through the roots. And then set this at that height. And then put the dirt around it. Now I got dirt in this tray. I'll just use it. I'll get it fairly high on the stem. So we've still got maybe, well, it's close to the top. It's not quite to the top of the root ball yet. But what I'm gonna do, because we put a stake on all our trees, and the reason we do that is so they go straight up instead of out to the sides, where it takes more room to grow them. You don't have to stake your trees. You can let it be more of a bush. But for us at the nursery, we like to keep them really straight up so I can pack them close together at the growing ground. So what I'm going to do is push this down, the soil down real tight with my fingers, so that when I put the stake in there, it'll stay where it's put. Now you don't have to do this. I mean, if you just settle with water, by watering a couple times, that'll settle down the soil just as well. But I do this way just because I like to work with dry soil when I'm doing all this stuff. And then I'll stake it to try to make, now there's not much here to stake. Some of the plants we have out there are this tall already. They're already 2 foot, so it'd be easier to stake them. So I'll try to be on the side closest to the stems. Now this is the dilemma here. It's got two stems coming off that. So they grafted, this is the graft, this is the piece they grafted on. It was an end piece on the branch of the tree, and then it sprouted out 2 shoots. Now, generally, the one that's going to become the master shoot is the one that starts at the very tip. So this one is slightly higher. Gosh, they're so close. They both come in at the end. Actually, this one may be at the very tip of this branch. Now, sometimes I'll do it, and then a few months later, I'll notice that this one's growing way faster and a lot bigger, and I'll cut off, then I'll stake that one up instead. But this one here looks like it might be at the very tip of that branch they grafted onto it. I'll try to get that right outside the root ball so it's fairly close. Even if your tree is crooked, once in 5 years in the ground, the trunk will be this big. You won't see any crookedness at all. And I have a few on there that'd be better to show you how to stake them, but I'll just stake it very lightly at the moment. Now this tape I can cut with my hands, but I might hurt the plant severely, so I'll cut it. And I usually like to tape the trunk a little closer to the stake. Okay, at this point, I've got about 2 or 3 inches of the root ball still exposed down there. And then we put on the fertilizer. Now, last year when we did this class, we had a fertilizer called Dr. Earth that combined organic fertilizer with mycorrhizal fungi, which are the symbiotic partners to the plant roots, and they'll help most plants grow much faster. Now, once you get in the ground, they pick up the mycorrhiza from the ground, so it's not essential you do it now, but if you want to, since we don't know if you're going to put this in the ground or keep it in a pot, we'll just add it at this point. So now this year we have mycorrhizal spores in 2 size packages, this size, $24, $10. This is enough to do 110 plants. So on the main instructions, they say put this in water and sprinkle it on after you get it planted. But they also mention you can just sprinkle it in the soil. Just a pinch. I mean, if this is 120 trees, these are spores of a fungus that will attach to the roots of the tree and become the roots and gather all its minerals for it. With just a tiny pinch right at the edge of the root ball there. Again, you don't have to do that step if you're planning to put in the ground, or you can actually take dirt from around a plant that's in the ground for a while and just stick it there. It's got the mycorrhizal fungus in it, and will just attach and get going. And then we usually, here at the nursery, we use Osmocote. Now, We do this because my dad told me when you do, because we used organic fertilizers back in the 60s, 50s and 60s, he told me you fertilize once a month. Well, after fertilizing the nursery once a month for a few decades and going, I'm not doing that anymore. That's a lot of work. So now we use the time release chemical fertilizer. 1 scoop for a this size container. Now this comes in other size containers you can buy if you wanted to do this. It has a different scooper in there, but I have a lot of these X lying around. So if you want, I have them back by the back door on that side. You just take one of these because it is the right amount for a 5-gallon bucket. So I sprinkle that around. And if you want, you can also add an organic fertilizer in here. If you want to do organic instead. In general, organics are a little slower to get going and you have to do them more often. They're better for the plant in the long run, so we usually do both. Because plants need, there are 13 minerals that plants need. The Osmocote has 10. So there's some micronutrients that it's missing, the organics don't miss. Now, most of the micronutrients that we're missing, regular dirt has in it. So it's not critical, but if you want to play it safe, go with an organic fertilizer also. I didn't bring my container, but up here. We do like this brand a lot. I'll go ahead and open it. Down to Earth. Dr. Earth went out of business. We've been selling Down to Earth for a few decades. And my scooper was here a second ago. Here, get out of here. And you can put a scoop of organic material in there too. I think for this size container, it would be like 2 or 3 scoops of this, 1 scoop of the Osmocote. You can put down 5 times too much fertilizer without hurting a plant. But I didn't put in quite a scoop of this one because we already put the Osmocote in there. And then fill the soil as high as you want it to go on top of that. And try to get it watered within a half an hour. This soil is actually somewhat moist, so it's not going to hurt it too bad if I don't get it watered right away, but I'll try to get that watered. So I've got it set up now like this, seed still exposed, about a ½ inch from the top of the container. When I water it, it'll go down another ½ inch. It'll settle a bit. And since we just got these this week, and it was almost 90 degrees here this week, we put shade over the entire place because they're coming out of greenhouse, so they're not quite used to full sun yet. When I take this to the growing ground, I'll probably set underneath a deciduous tree initially on the north side of it. Of course, in another month, it'll be in full sun because the sun's shifting now. So for a few more days, we'll have to protect these from full sun. I've got a canopy over part of that too, and we'll take that down next week. Next week, it's supposed to be 65 degrees and cloudy and rainy. So we'll go back to normal. We'll just take all the shade off, and those trees will get used to the sunlight as they normally would. So, and then we'll water it. If it's above 70, especially if it's above 75, I'll water this every day, whether or not it looks wet or dry. So in our soil, we don't like it to look dry. There's no such thing as overwatering. Not in proper soil. You can't overwater a plant. So avocado is the most root rot prone plant in the commercial orchard industry. So they had to make all these rules for, when they do orchards, the official rules from the universities, because they've had so much trouble with root rot, is to make these 2-foot-high berms. So you see photos of the university orchards, 2-foot-high dirt. And they plant the trees pretty much like that. And that's to prevent root rot, because all the trees they're planting have compost in the soil. Because that's how they figured out how to grow plants. So they have to get them up this high, essentially above the soil surface, so that the water table will drop down here. Water can't be saturated up to here. Saturated is when the spaces between the soil particles are filled with water. And you can't be saturated if you're above ground level unless the water is this high and, from a hurricane or something. So they do this so that the water is pulled down to this level, so you get air spaces coming in here so the oxygen can actually get back down to the roots. This is not necessary. I mean, my last house, we had clay soil, we planted at ground level. We did have, that was at the edge of my property though, so it was clay, and there was a 10-foot drop off within 4 feet of it. So it was well-drained clay. In fact, most of the avocados in California are on these hills back here and up north and down south, and they say their preference for avocado orchards is well-drained clay, because clay holds the water better, but it's got drainage because it's on a hillside. So that's supposed to be the best way to do it. But, at my last house, we had them in flat ground too. And an orchard nearby, which has the worst clay soil, you can get a clod this big and it just sticks the rest of the year. But they've got avocados this flat in that orchard. And when it rains, there's water staying there, but the avocado trees are fine. So perfect drainage is overrated, yes.
I live about 100 miles south. We get very little rain compared to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So all my watering is with city water. It's salt, chlorine, and chloramine. I can flush some of the salt out, and I can probably get rid of the chlorine. Chloramine is kind of difficult. Is that going to kill the bacteria, get good, helpful bacteria in the soil around my plants? And what do I do about it?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not a chemical person. I'm sure our tap water is close to being as bad, and we don't see any problems with the trees.
You have them in the ground?
Yes.
Can you get in the root, you get any tips burnt?
In
Any
what?
water? Well, do the tips burn on the
They're probably,
leaves? Yeah.
yeah, no, So if there's no tip burn, if the leaves are fine, the plant's probably fine.
So I would think so.
Yeah. So if you get so one of the problems we have when you don't have enough water, let's put it that way, is it's hard to get rid of the salts. So salt damage, now this is actually drought, but salt damage is essentially the same thing. So if you have leaves that get brown edged, this is a tree at my current house, which I don't own, and I don't have an irrigation system on it. And I neglect it for sometimes a week at a time, and it just tends to dry up on me. But, so that's salt burn. I mean, this tree's loaded with fruit. And it's still healthy essentially, but if I don't water enough, you get all this browning on the edges.
How do you tell the difference between water, dried out versus salt?
It's the same thing.
Okay.
So when a tree can dry up without doing this, so if you just dry out a tree one time, it'll just wilt, but you won't have this damage. If you let the tree get dry over and over and over, it's pulling the salt out of the ground because that's all the water that's left. So it starts doing this on you. So this is chronically dry, whereas if it just dries out once, you won't see this browning on it. Well, the leaves may just totally turn dry and fall off. They might get crispy green and fall off from one bad drying, but they won't do this. This is from repeatedly being lacking of water. So last water in the ground has got all the salt in it. The only way to get, now if we don't have good rain for like 3 or 4 years in a row, then the salt does build up in the ground. And you've got to flush it out by watering 5 inches of water in 5 inches of water in 1 week, and that's expensive to do. So we need that. You know, we've got the rain already this year here. We have, I think, a lot of our customers and friends have recorded about 10 inches so far in this area. So we shouldn't have a salt problem this year unless you don't water enough.
So when you say 5 inches of water, take the canopy area, call it 10 by 10, and just 5 inches tall?
Yeah. We've had about 10 inches of rain this year, and in a short time, and it's mostly November. So yeah. So that cleaned out the salt for the year. So just keep them wet, and when they get about this big, now the main thing I look at is the thickness of the trunk. The trunk's about as thick as your finger, your pinky. It should be strong enough to pull out the dirt without breaking the trunk off. That's how we gauge it here. So it's got to be thicker than a pencil. You know, 1/2-inch caliper would be thick enough to pull this out of the pot without breaking it. And generally, you just hit the edge of the pot and it comes out. And then 15 gallons, we want to see the caliper of that trunk closer to 1 inch. So at that point, because this weighs about 20, 25 pounds, maybe a little more when it's wet. And that root ball weighs about 50 or 60 pounds when it's wet. So we want 1 inch caliper on that. Now you can cut the container, but it's still hard to move it, root balls without handling the trunk. So we'd rather see it that size. Now, we do worry about the sun. So if the sun hits this when it's hot, now when you first plant them in here, the roots are well insulated because they're in the middle of this thing, and there's a lot of pumice and perlite, which are great insulators around it. So there's no problem with this being out in full sun right now, because even if the side on a 90-degree day will be well over 100 degrees, there's plenty of insulation between that and the roots in the middle. But by the time it's this big, the roots are at the edge, and we no longer want that sun on it, especially if it's around 90 degrees, because this will be like 120, 130 degrees. You'll lose the roots. You just cook the roots on that side of the pot. So you can paint it white. You could just shade it with something. At our growing ground, we have these close enough together that they're shading, the foliage is shading the pots by the time it usually gets warm. Now, Brokaw Nursery, to their credit, for one year, they tried using white pots just to see what would happen, because they had to whitewash every summer. And after 1 year, they said, no, it doesn't work. So the problem with white plastic pots is that the trees are so cold, they don't grow. It takes a lot longer to grow those things. So there's only about 3 months of the year when it's too hot to be in black. That just so happens, it's hot this month, close to 90 degrees, but you have to worry about July, August, September for the most part, maybe October too. But for the rest of the year, the black plastic is preferable because it keeps them warmer. The white is just too cold.
With this size, it gets bigger. If we want to fit in a container, should we worry about that too, and that gets more mature, bigger?
Yeah. So the best container to grow avocados in is wood. Now, the problem with wood is that it's not as, well, used to be wood is better than plastic. 40 years ago, plastic didn't last more than 1 or 2 years. Now it lasts a good 20 years out in the sun. So plastic lasts longer. You just have to make sure it's not black on the sunny side. Wood, so we sell redwood tubs that nurseries grow big trees in. Those are good for 5 to 10 years. It's actually, the wood doesn't fall apart first. It's actually all the little pieces, staples, and the metal bands that hold together, they just fall apart. We have half barrels and 3/4 barrels, which are last longer, 10 to 20 years if you get a single-use wine barrel, half wine barrel, because they've got really thick metal bands, and that wood seems to let, I've had them go 20 years with plants in them before they fall apart.
Can you grow the tree in there for 20 years?
It'll make it, and so most container plants make it to 10. I've had citrus die in a container after about 15. I haven't had any avocado. I haven't done avocados in pots that long. A friend of mine had an avocado in a wood box for 5 years, and the 5th year I looked at it, it had 80 avocados on it. I was amazed because that tree was only 5 by 5 and 80 avocados. I didn't think avocados made that much fruit in the container. I thought he'd get maybe 2 or 3. 80.
You must have been using your soil mix.
A good friend of mine for the last 30 years. So, and he's a geologist on top of that, so he knows what's going on. So anyway, so the half barrels will last longer, and they're more insulated to both heat and cold. So they're the best container to grow them in. But again, 10 years about max. His was 5 years old when I saw it, and it's looked great.
You're eventually going to get root bound though in it. I mean, is that what's going to kill it?
Yeah. So what kills them is the buildup of dead roots over time. That's what kills any plant. The roots live and die, live and die, live and die, and your pot gets filled up with dead roots. Now you can keep it going, because my dad was a bonsai artist, and in bonsai, their goal is to keep a plant in the same container indefinitely. But to pull up, we've seen how they do it in Japan. So they have this crane. So they have some of the bonsai are pretty big. They're like this, so they weigh a couple 100 pounds. So they have this crane lifting the tree out of the pot, and then they take off half the dirt, trim the plant back so there's no shock, put new dirt in there and put it in, and away you go for another 10 years. That's a bit of work. It's easier to start a new plant every, say, 10 years and just keep a line going. If you can get this, you get a box within 1 year from these little sleeves, it's easy to start a new one.
So you had a client that wanted avocados on a patio. You could grow it, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
For a good 10
Get the
years.
right varieties.
And get a pretty good sized pot.
Right.
Yeah.
So the varieties, the cultivars that we sell, most of them are more precocious and will fruit at a smaller size than, like Fuertes would often grow 15, 20 foot before they start producing with Hass. But there's a lot of them, you can see like these, that thing's like 4 foot tall, full of flowers. So they don't have to get, they'd be like any other fruit tree. They can be trimmed and kept to a size that you want. Yes.
How do they do in clay pots?
Clay's too cold in most of the year, but it should do fine once it's big. I mean, we did a funny thing, well, not funny thing, but 30 years ago, I put strawberry plants in the middle of winter in clay and plastic and different colored plastic. And the only one that grew at all was in the dark green pots. The white pots, they wouldn't grow, and the clay pots, they wouldn't grow. Too cold. The pots were, the certain colors are too cold to grow at certain times of the year. I mean, in the summertime, clay would be ideal. But do know that clay is cool because it evaporates water very fast. So you'd be watering that all the time. A friend of mine, one of our former employees, went and did a nursery up in the Sacramento area. He used the breathable fabric pots. He says, boy, these work real well keeping the plants cool, but we got to water them twice a day. Because fabric just, evaporates water, but it kept the roots from burning. But it just was, he said it had automatic irrigation, so it could do it. Anyway, keep them well watered. Now, once they're in the ground, water-wise, 50 years ago, we watered once a week. When they invented drip, they watered every 2 days. Now, all the agriculture research shows water 3 times a day and you're even better. So all the research we're getting from the universities around the world are showing that instead of watering 2 hours on drip every 2 days, water 20 minutes 3 times a day, and the plants, same amount of water, the plants just do better, produce better, do better. Now, 30 years ago, University of California tested because they wanted to figure out if once a week watering with the same system made better root system than everyday water. And they watered half the orchard every day, with the same amount of water as once a week on the other side. When they pulled the trees out of the ground, the roots on the everyday watered trees were much bigger, deeper, more extensive. Everything they tell us about infrequent watering being better for plants is not true.
So we don't want to water infrequently
Right.
on
Constantly, lightly.
More than a week. That's interesting.
Constantly, lightly. So there are farms in Central Valley who we've read the articles about, they water 18 times a day. Save a lot on their water bill, no loss of crop.
Really?
So frequent irrigation, as long as you don't overdo it. You know, if you overdo it, you just waste water.
Yeah.
You're not going to hurt anything. If your plants are not in compost, which everything out there is.
Well,
That's
are
the
they
problem
paying
with
more
trees.
in water? I mean, how are they compensating for the increase in water use?
No, they water for less time.
Less time, more frequent.
Yeah.
Okay, so same amount of water.
Same amount of water.
Dividing it up into 18 increments.
Right.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, they said they saved 30% on their water bill
Wow. Okay.
by watering 18 times a day. Whenever it was 80 degrees for an hour, they watered.
So it's kind of like a spritzer almost.
Right. They have computers. You have to have computers set up to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that stuff.
Sinus, I think.
Yes.
Well, I have a tree, avocado tree that's 50 years old, and I wonder now that my husband passed away, oh my God, how often do I water it? How long do I leave the water on the tree? And I just bought a tree with my name on it. Now I don't water the baby tree as much as the 50-year-old, or how deep are the roots on the old tree?
Roots don't go much below a foot. That's just how it is in nature. A foot is about it. So, you know, a 25-foot tree would probably use about 30 gallons a day here. If you have a 50-foot tree, I don't know what that'd be. That would be like 3 times as much. But we know the research. So UC, University of Riverside in Riverside said 90-degree day, a 15-foot tree, 50 gallons of water in Riverside. Here it's going to be less because we're closer to the ocean. So we figure around 30 gallons a day here for a 15-foot tree. So my first house, I set up my drip irrigation to water a grapefruit tree 30 gallons a day, and it never looked wet. And it did fine, never looked wet. So we know that's the water they're using. So you can't overwater it. You can certainly underwater it.
Well, another thing that happened, and it never happened before, is one of the branches, it just broke off. And when I took the avocados off that one branch, and 45 avocados, was it too heavy?
Maybe, yeah. That's a common problem with any fruit tree. You can break branches if you've got too much fruit on them. Okay, let's get back. Let's see. So when you get them in the ground, you don't have to do this stuff. You can put them on fairly flat soil. I mean, what you don't want is you don't want an area of your yard that puddles in the winter. Although at the orchard nearby, it puddles there really bad when it rains, and their trees still look good. So it's not critical, but try to make it a slightly raised area if you've got clay. In sandy soil, you don't have to do a thing. And for our trees, you don't have to, they're not growing in compost, so you don't have to do anything special. Although the bigger the tree you buy, since the roots only go down a foot, and these trees are slightly over a foot deep, you might want to make the soil around them. The 15-gallon trees have about a 14-inch deep root system. You might want to put either some of our top pot or sand around the sides of them so the air can get all the way down to the bottom so you don't lose the bottom roots. The problem with our big containers, they have air holes at the bottom to let the water out, but it's also let the air in. So the roots kind of gather down there where they should be closer to the surface. You know, the most roots of a plant are in the top 6 or 8 inches of soil, not a foot deep like that. So for the bigger pots, you know, so we'd rather have people plant them when they're this big. I mean, if customers wanting to buy the 24-inch box, plant a 24-inch box, you don't set it up right, it'll stall it for maybe a year or at least half year because it's got to reconfigure its root system closer to the surface. We hear a lot of people buy 24-inch box avocados from other growers and they're dead in 5 months. And they get them replaced and they're dead in another 5 months. I mean, you know, they just don't, because they're in compost, you put them that deep in the ground, they're just rot. So anyway, as far as other things go, so they bloom this time of year. Now they usually bloom between December and June. Most avocados bloom for about a month and a half, but some of the early ones bloom in December, and some of them stretch all the way out to June. The warmer it is when they bloom, the better off. Well, you got to get bees to the flowers, and bees like warmer weather. Now this year, no problem in December or January or February. So far, it's warm, so the bees are out. Now the universities put too much on the fact that there are 2 kinds of blooming patterns in avocados. So there's an A type and a B type. And for our purposes, I would tell you, you don't have to worry about it. Now, the A-type flower or so on, so when avocados first open up their flowers, the stigma in the middle, which is the female part, so this is the female part, it's ready. The male stamens with the pollen on them are stuck against the petals. You won't see them when they first open. Half a day later, the female's still there, but now the male stamens are sticking up. Get that right? Anthers? Anthers.
Those are anthers, yeah.
Are sticking up with the pollen on them. Now this is a male stage. This is the female stage of this flower. At this point, the female part of that flower is no longer receptive. So the pollen's got to get from there to there. So on the A-type avocados, they are female in the morning and male in the afternoon. On the B-type, they are female in the afternoon and male the next morning. So in theory, if you have a B avocado next to an A, the bees can carry the pollen more efficiently, but the research hasn't shown it to be that effective. Mainly because we know bees are not, they're very lazy. They go from the closest flower to the next closest flower, next closest flower, next closest flower. Because they used to tell us, you know, to plant pollinators within 25 feet. We don't see the bees going from that tree all the way to this tree. They just don't do it. So now they have to be the closest.
Native bees are better at it. I'm a beekeeper,
Okay,
but native bees are much better at it.
okay,
But honeybees will devour one tree,
yeah.
like you said.
So instead of being, so the University of California, the way they set up the test, and they only did this, I've only seen the research on Hass. So you got 9 Hass trees in a block. You pull out the one in the middle so that they're all adjacent trees and replace this with Zutano, which is by far, they found to be the best pollinator for Hass. Most orchards, most stores never sell Zutano. It's not a very good variety. I mean, if I get a Zutano, I'll eat it. It's considered good. It's better than some of the, off of a properly ripened homeowner tree. It's gonna be better than a lot of stuff at the supermarket. The stuff at the supermarket's horrid. But Zutano is not a commercial variety. The skin's too thin, it can't ship. It's got defects in the skin. It's often got cracks in it. But it's the best pollinator for Hass. So you have to take out 1 out of 9 trees, which means you just take out 9% of your orchard. or 12% of your orchard. And they found that in 5-year tests, it increased the production of all these hass trees by 11%.
Why?
So they went negative. They said, but the University of California came back and said, well, some years it was 25%. Well, if your average is 11%, it means some years it was nothing. So, the research doesn't show that. Now, what the research does show is that avocados will set a lot of fruit. Most of it will drop off in the summer. Most of the fruit that drops off was self-pollinated. That means the bee went from, so on avocado trees, what they find is on a bigger tree that they don't act perfectly. The A trees will have some mix-up in the timing of their blooms. So an A tree, so essentially most of the fruit on an A tree is pollinated by itself, and most of the fruit on a B tree is also pollinated by itself. It's not from another tree, but most of the fruit that falls off the tree was they don't find many cross-pollinated fruit falling off. So the cross-pollinated fruit from a different tree will hang on better. But if A's are crossing with A's, if an A tree can cross with itself, you just get another A tree next to this one, and hopefully you'll get the cross with the A of a different type, and that'll still help the fruit hang on better. It's just the B has the opposite flowers, so if they're right next to each other, that B might help this one better, but it's got to be one that you want to eat. Because instead of having a Hass and a Zutano, you can have 2 Hasses and have more good fruit than a Hass and a Zutano. So the orchard people say don't use pollinators because to them it's not worth it. Now, there's a new thing going on now that I'll tell you about that they're doing instead of that, because Hass is not the main avocado being grown anymore in the orchards. So, yes.
That has 4 avocado trees, 25 feet. One out of those 4 does not produce any 2 avocados the whole year. And we were trying to figure out, is one an A versus a B, but they all look the same. It's just.
Do you know the origin of those trees? Are they propagated or are they just seed grown?
From seed.
Yeah. Yeah, some avocados just don't produce well.
It's just.
I try to chop out the tree off, it'll shock it into it sometimes. You can try it.
No, it's worth trying.
I've done it, it doesn't always work.
So from seed, I have one customer said they planted 13 hassets, and the fruit off of 8 of them are good enough to eat. And 5 of them they dug out and just got rid of them. They said they were. So your chance of getting, and I've grown 1 avocado from a pit. This is my second one I'm growing from a pit. And that one was okay, but it was never a heavy producer, so I just cut it down. So yeah, most of the varieties we'll be talking about were homeowner varieties that they just threw pits in their yard and up came this wonderful tree. So it's always fun to do that. Your chances aren't great, but they're not bad. They're not horrible. So, but they will take, so from a seed, you can see this tree looks a lot different from the grafted trees. This is a 2-year-old tree. And it was a lot taller than this. I had to cut it off to get it in my truck to bring it over here. And the leaves are bigger. It's growing a lot faster. So I don't expect, I was hoping this thing would bloom on its second year, but to see if it's real precocious, because we've seen a few seedlings bloom on their second year of life. This one's not, so I'll probably just give it away. But usually they start flowering within 5 to 10 years, and then they'll make their fruit. Seedlings are very symmetrical in the way they grow. Robocalls. And so they rarely ever burn. Trees, when they're grafted, are not as symmetrical when they grow, and they're more subject to sunburn. Now, we have found when we grow our trees from these sleeves, And in our top pot, they don't sunburn much. If I get, when I used to get them from a regular retail supplier back in the 90s, at 90 degrees, they would just burn up. They were very sensitive to heat, mainly because they probably just don't have healthy roots. So they couldn't get the water up and cool off their branches. But we rarely see, well, we get some burning, but nothing that looks severe. I mean, I remember when I was back in the 80s, I had an avocado tree in the ground, and a branch was sitting like this. We had a 105-degree day. Got a burn mark right here, and that branch broke off the next day. Severely burnt. But ever since we started growing them, we found out what heat does. When was that? 2017, 2016, when we hit 112, and then a few years later we hit 115. So I had these trees growing in my side yard at that time at my house, and my daughter called me up. She says, "I'm watering them, but all the new growth is shriveled up on them at 115. Well, it's right next to a block wall on top of that, so all the new growth is shriveled up. The stems didn't burn, just the new growth just couldn't handle that high temperature. The mature leaves were fine. They didn't have any problem at all. And it stayed warm that year. The tops grew really fast. We had really tall trees by the end of the year, but we couldn't do anything anything over 110, the new growth just fries. It can't handle that heat. But the mature leaves can go probably over 120 degrees. Because that spot where I had them, in fact, we grow them at a friend's yard near Foothill High School. We have them against a west-facing block wall. And the road next to that block wall is white rock. And they're on black plastic, so we expect them to handle the heat. We want to make sure they can handle the heat when we sell them, so we have them in the worst possible location you can think of. We do keep their black pots, in close together so they don't burn the roots, but the tops, we have them exposed to a lot of heat, and they can take it. So even though we keep the whitewash around, we haven't used it for the last 3 years. Of course, the last 3 years, we really haven't broken 100 degrees. So if they say it's going to be around 110, then I'll get out there and get it again. So the whitewash we sell now, you can use water-based or latex light-colored paint. It doesn't have to be white, but it should be light-colored. You can cut in half water if you don't like the starkness of the white and paint. You don't paint the leaves. The leaves rarely burn. But you paint exposed parts of the stem the sun can hit. If the leaf's not shading them properly, then you can paint that with the latex paint. Now this is an organic product for organic farms. So this is made out of a little container. It's made out of, boy, I'm getting hard to read that. Oh, that's not, okay, so this is mica, dried milk, silica, diatomaceous earth.
No way.
So milk and diatomaceous earth, really.
Yeah.
And you can put this in the thing, add water. This will be enough to paint about 5 medium-sized avocado trees. Or you can just open up, put a little powder in a little cup, paper cup or something, mix with a little water. Sometimes use my finger and just paint the branches real fast. So you use a little at a time. So that's what they use in organic orchards. Now, these are expensive, but no one else does it. $39 for that. Orchards, of course, buy this by the drum. So they get it at a lower cost per tree. But that's that's the organic. If you want to be totally organic, use something like that. If you don't care, just use white like tin. Now, it's all over your house, so it's not like you're not being exposed to it.
Organic here.
Pardon?
It's hard to be organic in the city.
Yeah.
You got a neighbor right.
True. Okay, so that's whitewash. So you watch the sides of the tree that the sun might burn the stem on, and it's well above 100 degrees. That's when you have to watch out. So fertilizer-wise, we like to keep them well fed till they're fruiting size, and fruiting size basically is maybe 6 or 7 foot by about 5, 6 foot wide. At that point, the trees fruit better if you don't fertilize them much. So they found out on production orchards, the only times of years that the fertilizer actually helped them make more fruit was November and June, those 2 months. So in June, that's past the time they've set their fruit. Fruit's already so big, now they have to grow their foliage. In November, you want them to make more flowers, so you feed them in November before they start making leaves and making their flower buds. But if you feed them when they're blooming, now, they said they'll often abort their crop and make leaves instead of fruit. Now, when they're young, we want them to make leaves. We just want to make lots of leaves to keep the tree from sunburning in the future. So you just keep feeding them when they're young. But again, once they reach production size, whatever big that size you want them to be, then you really back off on the fertilizer. They don't need a whole lot. We want to keep the dead leaves underneath the trees. They keep the soil temperature down. They keep the salt from coming to the surface if you have a thick layer. A friend of mine went to Guatemala 20 years ago to see how deep the dead leaves were underneath some of the wild avocados. I can't believe him, but I know he told me it was 5 foot deep. They dug through 5 foot of dead leaves on the ground before they got to the dirt.
Rain go out there again.
Now, avocado leaves don't live that long, so these leaves here, less than a year, they'll start dropping off this summer. And when they get ready to put on a new set of flowers, a lot of times these leaves will get really ugly right at that time and start raining down. And we've seen them, last year they seemed to go totally bare when they were blooming. This year they've kept their leaves, I guess it's warmer this year, this winter, so they're holding their leaves better, but it's not unusual for avocados to go bare when they're blooming. And if we get a real hot day at that time, they're real subject to sunburn because there's no leaves, so you have to watch it at that time. A lot of the orchards said that they would whitewash their trees from a plane. Now I guess they do it with the drone. But in the old days, they would just fly a crop duster over it and whitewash the trees in the middle of winter if they had dropped their leaves. Okay, the other reason, I should mention, so the other reason we grow them in containers for 3 months is because there is genetic variability in these seeds. There's also some variability in the scion wood that they graft on here. So what the research has shown is that the location of the scion wood on the mother plant will determine how the baby grows for a while. So on citrus, they did a lot of research because they're coming up with some really weird things that were going on. They found out if they took the scion wood off the top of a tree, it tended to be slower growing but very precocious. If they took the scion wood off the bottom branches of the same tree, it tended to be very vigorous and juvenile, and that didn't flower for a few years. So that's one thing we don't know. We don't know where the scion wood came off the original tree. And also, the further away you get from the original tree, the more precocious the scion wood is. In other words, if you took a branch off the original Hass tree, it'll act like a baby. If you took a branch off a grafted Hass tree, it'll act a little more precocious than the original one. The further away you go, a branch off, a clone off, clone off, clone off, clone will be more precocious than the original, than branches off the original tree. And that's, unfortunately, we don't know that on these plants. Now, also, there's genetics in every seed is genetically different. Most of them are good, some of them are not. And that's another thing we don't know. That's why we also say grow them in here for 3 months so you know if it's a good tree. Now last year we grew close to 500 of these and about a half dozen, so that's 1 out of 100, couldn't sell them. So 2 died totally within a few months. And again, that's 1 out of 400, 500 we plant. So it's not, for most homeowners, you won't see this, but we see it. So we had 2 that died. This one is really weird. There's something wrong with that one. It looks like it got hit by a weed killer, but we don't use weed killers at our growing ground. So, got to be something to do with the genetics of the seed. It's just doing something really weird to the leaves. Now, also as they grow, you have to watch the suckers. So anything that's below this blue tape where it is right now, this tape will fall off by itself within a year. I mean, all these big guys, it's fallen off. But if you see any growth coming out of the tape or from below the tape, like right here, here's one that's coming right out of the tape. So that's the root stock. And plus you can see the leaves are a different color. Dutano is Mexican root, so the new growth is quite red. So take that off. And this one's coming from the seed itself, so that's also rootstock. So you do have to watch that. Because some of our less experienced growers, they don't even look at their trees for 6 months, and you come back, it's all rootstock. They show me a picture of the tree, it's got 5 trunks on it. It's like, okay, you weren't watching that one. So make sure you cut those things below the graft off. Yes?
I got one last year at Jan Joyce, and I wasn't paying attention, and I realized maybe the rootstock overtook the graft, and I cut back the rootstock. And it's kind of a stunted growth, but can I expect that to recover?
Well, you caught it before it's a few years old, so hopefully the scionwood will be able to become dominant, have enough energy to keep those roots alive. Because that's one thing, if you don't have enough top to keep the roots alive, you're in trouble. The other thing that goes on.
It's blooming right now. So.
Okay, well, it's got a lot of energy, let's put it that way. So if it's growing fast and has big leaves, the roots are healthy. The smaller the leaves get, now different avocados have different sized leaves, but generally the bigger the leaves, the healthier the plant. If you get root rot, the leaves get really small. Now, this is one that totally stunted. It's also got a sucker growth on it. But what probably happened on this one is that, so the problem we have with these is that if we have a hot day and this is laying like this in the sun, roots just burn up. So that's probably what happened on this one. It looks pretty healthy, but it's probably missing a lot of roots still. So it's just not good. It's got energy. It's blooming. But we by the time we get to May and June, they've been sitting out there a long time, and we try to keep these standing up and keep them shaded, but sometimes the customer come by, they'll knock it over, and it's 80 degrees, it just burns the roots up. So we take all the ones at the end, we expect them to be kind of stunted. I'll pull them out of here. If the roots are all brown, I'll take those off, see if there's anything healthy there. If it's hopeless, I'll just throw it away. If it looks like it'll regrow healthy, then I'll pot it and expect to sell it a year later. So there's that too. You have to watch what you buy from us. The earlier ones you buy, the healthier they are overall. If you wait till April or May and it's been warm during that time, there's a chance that the roots are cooked in there. So that's another problem we have. Okay, bug-wise, there's a new bug that came into California, unfortunately, 2 years ago, or first reported 2 years ago. Now, 25 years ago, we had a bug come in called Persea mite. Which was really nasty when it first came to California. This leaf has silver spots. You can see them on the top a little bit, but on the bottom leaf by all the veins, there's these silver spots about not quite a 1/4 inch in diameter on the bottoms of this brand, the leaves. Now, when this bug first came to California, it was on both sides of the leaf. There's so many of them, it was just all over the place. And it's a little spider mite, and the silver spots you see are actually little webs. And underneath the web is a colony of around 20 little spider mites, and they're sucking on the leaf. And if it gets real bad, the tree just defoliates. It doesn't kill the tree. The tree got rid of the mites by totally defoliating, and then of course the tree's real weak. It has to regrow leaves, and it gets subject to sunburn. So that was a problem. We found if we hit them with a good oil spray, one shot would usually clean them up. Now oils aren't working as good in spider mites as they were before. We usually have to hit it several times now, but when we first saw this bug back in the late 90s, early 2000s, one good shot of a horticultural oil would clean them up. And now we have to do it several times. Well, they're all over the place now. So what happened was about 10 or 15 years ago, University of California went down to Mexico or Central America to find the natural predator to this bug, which is another mite. So now both of them exist in California. So you don't have to treat that if you see it. I mean, it's nice to treat it. It'll save your tree some energy. I haven't treated this one at all because it no longer defoliates the tree. It never gets as bad. So what happens is every 2 or 3 years through the neighborhoods, now this mite can go on 3 different kinds of trees, avocados, camphor, which is a distant relative, and one other tree. I think it's a type of bay tree.
It's a bay tree.
Yeah. And so the bad mites will blow through the neighborhood first. Good mites blow through the neighborhood after that. So they usually don't get real bad because the good mites are following them up. So the orchards no longer treat this. It never gets as bad as it did, but you can treat it if you see it with the oil sprays. Rule with oil sprays, you want to do it on a warm, mild day. Not above 95 degrees, not below 60. The oil kills the bugs because they can't breathe for an hour or so. The trees' leaves can hold their breath for a lot longer, but not for days on end. So you don't want to do it when it's cold because the oil won't evaporate. And you don't want to do it when it's raining because the oil won't evaporate. Even if it's misty, the oil won't evaporate. So day like today, around high 70s, perfect. If you do it midday, don't do it too close to night. Back in the 80s, I thought we had to do this when it was real cold. So I had a citrus tree with bugs on it. So I sprayed this stuff. It was like 6 in the evening. It was 40 degrees that night, and within 2 days, that tree defoliated. Didn't kill it, but certainly messed up that crop for the year. So that's Persea mite. The other bug that just showed up is avocado lace bug. We treat it the same way, so you just have to get the oil out for that one. I was looking, thought I brought a sample. This looks like a patch right here. So the patches can get pretty big, right not on the edge of the leaf, and they just turn pale. Usually it's a pale tan first. The bug it poops on the leaf, so it makes little black specks like pepper spots on the leaf too. So you get these large patches of light color on the leaves. My big box tree outside has some patches on some of the leaves. But yeah, same cure. Spray the oil on it. There's a few bugs that'll make holes in the avocados. Not, I don't know, we never see that serious of problems. We have spinosad products, which are organic, which if you have green grasshoppers or caterpillars in there, we just don't see enough of it to treat it. Oh, I didn't finish the pollination part yet. So, so when you pollinate, the main thing you have to do is get the bees to the tree. If the bees aren't out there, you got to do it by hand, which is a pain. So they said the average Hass avocado tree, say a 15-foot Hass tree, has 1 million flowers a year. You get an average of 110 fruit on a Hass tree, which is 1 fruit for every 10,000 flowers. Not very good. They're capable of producing more than that. So one of the researchers at UC Riverside, probably here at the Irvine Field Station, decided to hand pollinate the Hass tree. I can't imagine. I mean, how much work is that? But he got 700 fruit when he hand pollinated. So we know the bees don't really like the avocados. The nectar in the flowers turns out to be on the bitter side. So the kiss of death to your avocado fruit production is to have it next to an orange tree blooming at the same time, because the orange nectar is way better than the avocado nectar. The bees just go there. So I learned all this stuff about 8 years ago. I had 5 avocados in my yard and 9 citrus trees. And on 5 avocados, I saw 1 fruit. And they were just about done blooming. I had 1 branch of 10 flowers left in my entire yard going, this is terrible. So I started looking up the pollination, learned that about the citrus, that it's not good to have citrus near avocados because the bees won't go to your avocados. Then we looked up, 2 separate guys on the internet said, well, if you spray honey on your avocado trees, they'll be favored over the citrus. So they said they get good quality honey. So this is from a local orchard. You add hot water to this. So I put in the add water from the microwave, just warm it up because honey doesn't dissolve very well. So it's 1 part honey to 3 or 4 parts of water. So that's 20 to 25% honey. Put it in your sprayer, shake it up real good. You don't have to spray the flowers. I mean, spray the flowers, but if you hit the leaves, it's the smell of honey that it brings the bees in from distance. They can smell it. And then they'll see the landing patterns on the flowers of your avocado and land on it. And they won't leave. They'll just sit right there and you'll just have bees all day long on that. So my last 10 flowers, I got 5 fruit. I couldn't believe it. 5 fruit on 10 flowers, because it's 1 fruit out of every 10,000 on average. So to get 5 fruit out of 10 flowers is amazing. So people who have used the honey said, yes, it's like grapes on your tree. The tree can't hold them. It'll drop most of them, but it's better to have looking like grapes on the tree than have no fruit at all. So a lot of our customers do this now. They said to get good quality honey so you don't hurt the bees. A lot of the cheap stuff at the stores is not
Buy
good.
it from a local beekeeper.
Yeah.
There's a lot of clubs there. Call one up.
So that's the trick of getting the bees, unless you have a hive right on your property. If you have a hive, so the local, my friend who lets me grow stuff on her property, she's got 200 citrus trees and she's got about 20 avocado trees, but they have like 3 hives there. So anytime you see the avocados blooming, there's bees on them.
I saw one of your other videos that somebody asked about ants. We have ant problems. They're on our lemon tree. They're everything. We tried that powder, the
Diatomaceous
yes,
earth.
nothing's working. So you talked about some spray that like kills off all the ants, or some kind of bait that like killed off all the ants. What?
Right.
Honey, I'm worried that we're going to get more ants.
Yeah, now the baits aren't organic, but you don't have to, they're just baits. So you can put them almost anywhere the ants will find them nearby. The one we sell is Amdro. So it's a cornmeal bait with a slow-acting poison in it. You know, before that we had contact poisons. You either spray or put this contact poison around. The ants couldn't walk on it for 2 weeks, but it didn't kill the colony, and after 2 weeks they're out full numbers again. This, they can eat it, take it back to the super colony in their neighborhood, feed them, kill off everybody, and then they're gone. Like when this first came out 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we had one of those real bad ant problems in our neighborhood. I had a 1/4 acre backyard. We had, you know, the ant trails this wide. Put out this one twice that year, and no one in my neighborhood saw ants for 10 years.
And so what is it? 'Cause we do have dogs. I don't know what Andrew, what kind of.
So one of our customers is a dog owner. He called up Amdro and asked him how much of this pod or this granular stuff would kill his dog. He said 2 pounds of it, there's enough poison in 2 pounds of it to kill a dog. 2 pounds can treat an acre. So your dog would probably die from the dirt before it died from the poison, because you spread 2 pounds over an acre.
And do you spray it? Do you spray it anywhere or just smear it?
Buttercup.
You can
Put
put
the
it,
lid on,
right.
holes and ants will go
so
in.
you can put it in a
okay.
plastic bottle essentially with holes in it, so your dog can get to it, the ants can get in there.
Works pretty good.
I have had good experience with that, yes, but I got a ton of ants in my neighborhood, and it's every other year that we put it out, of course.
Now, there's a new product in the market that's an improvement over Amdro. My supplier doesn't have it in stock yet, so I can't sell it. I'll just put the name down. So it's the same thing as Amdro, but they added a sterilizer to it too, to sterilize the queen. I mean, worker ants can actually lay eggs too if the queen's not there, so you need to sterilize everybody. So Extinguish has got a sterilizer in it on top of Amdro, and this is on the internet right now. My distributor has it in their catalog, but they're not in stock yet, so I can't sell it to you yet.
Does that work for termites also?
Yes. Termites hurt your house, they don't hurt plants. Okay, all right, so ants, the pests. So ants will bring scale to your avocado tree, then you have to hit them with oil also. So, see if there's any other thing on culture we need to cover here. So this product is being used by orchards to stop root rot, called Garden Phos. The chemical name of it is mono and dipotassium salts phosphorus acid. In California, it's registered as a fungicide. In many states, it's registered as a fertilizer, because both potassium and phosphorus are fertilizers. So on this product, there's no waiting time, because it is fertilizers don't have waiting times. So we use this a lot in the nursery. We don't use it in our avocados because we don't expect to get root rot on them. But this has been the best product for phytophthora root rot on avocados. But they, in the orchards, they inject it. But they said that you can bring an avocado back from near death with this product. It was created first in South Africa. And some orchards, if they have a bad root rot problem, they'll actually put this in their watering system. Just use it once a month on their root system. But again, if you buy an avocado from us, you shouldn't never have to use this. Although you can do it if you want. But that's Garden Phos. We use it because it's really good against downy mildew on basil, on roses, on onions, on impatiens. And again, it's not considered a poison to people. It's a fertilizer.
How do you apply it?
Spray. Well, we apply it by a sprayer, liquid and water. They want you to use it as they say on avocados. They have instructions for foliar spraying or injection to the trunk. They used to say you can put it in the roots too, but they took that one off. I don't know if there's something wrong with California. Maybe doesn't like poisons, chemicals being put in the ground. I don't know. So they took it off the instruction sheet on how to just drench the roots. But that was on the original label.
Will that affect protea and things like that?
Well, it's a fertilizer, so it shouldn't. I mean, as much as other, certain fertilizers are bad for a ground
Proteas
organisms.
are real sensitive to,
Phosphorus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably making it turn yellow. Yeah. Okay, I think that's all the culture we can, unless we can think of anything else culture-wise. So you can prune them, keep them around 10 foot. One of the things they're doing at the field station, supposedly starting last year, is espaliering their avocados. So in Japan, they've always had them espalier in greenhouses because it's too cold in Japan in the winter in most of Japan to grow them outside. So they were doing half avocados in a greenhouse in a container with the branches going up 2 directions like that. And look at photos, and there was a fruit every few inches on those branches. We're just amazed. And in South Africa, they found the same thing. Real heavy production on espalier branches. And it's about 8 years ago, my wife and I went down to the Great Park in Irvine where we had planted a Hass-type avocado there, and everyone said, this thing is real productive. And the tree was about a 6-foot tree, but had one branch coming out like this that had 50 avocados hanging on it. The avocados were touching the dirt, but the branch was about a foot above the dirt. Well, no, this is odd. That one branch has more avocados than the entire rest of the tree. And then I was at a customer's house. They had a house that was planted in their backyard. One branch laying on the flagstone underneath the tree, totally loaded also. I'm going, I've seen this twice. What's going on? Well, it turns out that the problem with avocado trees is you have a nice branch sticking out in the sun, getting plenty of light so they get energy to make flowers. Once that fruit forms on there, the branch does this and the fruit hangs straight down. So that branch doesn't fruit anymore. It's in the darkness of the tree, so it's got to grow new branches out into the sun, and then they'll fruit, and then they'll hang straight down too. So the tree's wasting a lot of energy making new branches. If you espalier the branch, it's never in the shade. And it fruits like crazy. If it's healthy, it shouldn't sunburn. So, very interesting. So they test right now to see which cultivars or varieties of avocados do well in this system.
There's only 2 branches.
Well, in Japan they use 2. South Africa was 3 levels, I believe.
It is full sun.
Yeah, full sun. And one's in South Africa. You can look on the internet. You know, they have them scattered here, here, here.
Can you stake your tree branches up against the wall if it's next to a wall?
Well, yeah, I mean, the other thing you do is have a regular tree sitting in the ground, and then you support this branch and it's going this way. You can support the branch going front and back, just so they don't dive down once they have fruit on them. So you can make it each tree can go like a Christmas tree almost. You support, make sure those branches don't dive on you, keep them supported. So you don't have to be just 2-dimensional if you don't want it to be. It can be 4-dimensional, but plenty of sunlight on those branches so that they stay productive.
So it's possible to keep a tree at 8 feet?
If it'll grow that big.
Yeah.
I mean, so as we go over the varieties, there are some trees that actually are so small because of the production that they never get above your head height. So, okay, so that's something new too, this supporting the branches stuff. Okay, the cultivars that we sell, let's do it alphabetically. Now we're missing a few off our list that we may pick up later in the year. But we have bacon. It's a B type, at least if you want to know. The fruit on it, the quality on it is good to very good. Now, I'm not sure what we wrote on the list. One of my other employees made this list up. Yeah, they said good, very good. It's a green skin. Jim Bacon discovered it. He's a farmer. The book says, a lot of the old literature is November to March is the season. In November, it's just water. Now, in a year like this, well, November was still cold. If we have a warm November, maybe down in San Diego or even further south, if November's warm, it might have some flavor by then, but around here, it's pretty bad in November. By January, it's quite good. Quite good. And near March, I like, the thing about bacon is it's one of this, avocados aren't sweet. That's why they're good for you. Bacon actually, to me, tastes sweet. There's got to be some sugar content in it. So I do like it. It's a good producer. It doesn't get huge. It'll produce. Well, mine produced when it was about 8 foot tall. So that's your bacon. So I would say January through March is its best time. Then Carmen. So this is the Hass that we sell. We don't sell original Hass because original Hass is just not a great producer. The official name for Carmen is Hass Mendez strain. That's the name that is patented by. So Carlos Mendez, who this is named after, down in Mexico in his Hass orchard, found a tree that flowered anytime it wanted to. Now, the original Hass trees, some of the old trees do that. But when they took scions off those trees, they wouldn't reproduce that effect. So the Carmen is the first Hass multiple bloomer that seems to stay with it, with its offspring. So it is, genetically, it's Hass. This is the tree at my house. That's the typical Hass look. They're kind of a dull green, and then they ripen black. Some sunburn on that one. And they range in size from small to medium. Here's a Carmen from the orchard, my friend's orchard, almost ripe. So if you have a whole orchard of Carmen, you're real happy because you can go out to your orchard of Carmen and find ripe fruit anytime you want. But if you only have 1 or 2 trees, each tree seems to do things on its own schedule. Like the one at my house, first year I had it, made the spring crop. Second year I had it, I said, well, this is wonderful. It bloomed in winter, set some fruit, bloomed in spring, set some fruit, bloomed in summer, set some fruit, bloomed in fall, set some fruit. And then it took 4 years off and didn't bloom at all. And now it's last year, totally loaded. That's why I've got this all over the tree. So with one tree, you just don't know what it's going to do. But if you have a whole orchard of them, they said the farmers love it because they can find ripe fruit. So they show a picture of a Brokaw nursery on their website. It shows a picture of a Carmen orchard in spring bloom. About 2/3 of the trees are blooming. The rest of them are on a different schedule. And now at the growing ground, we planted 3 over there where our growing ground is. And last year they bloomed, they had their spring bloom, all of them had their spring bloom. 2 of them had a summer bloom, 1 of them bloomed in fall also. Now they're all in bloom again. So they do different things. But they make the Hass fruit. You have to kind of go by size and when to pick it because there's always fruit on them. Now, usually, on avocado trees, when they have fruit hanging on, they don't bloom on that branch again. But one of my customers who has a Carmen keeps sending me pictures of his Carmen tree with fruit and flowers right around the fruit. So his tree just keeps on blooming on the same, right around the fruit over and over and over.
Well, how do you know when to pick?
You know,
Well, one of my branches broke, and so then.
well,
how do
okay,
I
so
know if it's ready to be?
we know it's right if it's ready, if within 5 days that fruit is soft. Then you know it was ready.
5 days after I.
When you pick it. If it's ripe within 5, if it takes 7 days, it's still okay. But beyond that, like if you pick it way too early, it just turns rubbery. Never gets
It's
real
been
good.
about a week that it fell off the tree, so.
It looks like a type of.
In a bag.
No, just leave it out.
No?
Well, putting it in a bag will keep the moisture a little better. Because sometimes if you pick them and they're not quite ready yet, they kind of shrivel like this. So in the bag might hold the moisture, may keep them a little more humid in there.
And the problem with me is that this is a tiny avocado for that tree. And so now that I have all of these avocados from one branch, I'm giving them away and I'm telling them it's a test. I don't know if it was ready to pick or not.
Well, a lot of the big avocados that are around like that, a Nabal, Reed, Nimlio, they're best picked summer, fall. But like what I did is I picked a Reed in January to see if it was edible at all. It was. It wasn't all that good, but it was edible. By April, it was really good. But they don't recommend picking till July when it's at its best. So that one's probably, it's February now, so that's probably edible, but maybe not as good as what it
Do I
will
wait
be.
for it to get soft or not?
No, they never get soft on the tree. You have to just
Somebody's gonna put a toothpick and see if it's, check it out that way, but I don't know.
well, the other thing you do is you just turn them to the side. If they snap off when you do that, they're really ripe. I mean, these shouldn't be picked until about, well, they usually say February through June on Hess, I believe. I don't have Hess on here, so I can't check it. But, yeah. But I've already picked one of these actually a month ago, and it turned out okay. So I know that those are ready. So anyway, Carmen is the one that is an A-type. It's excellent quality, and it's usually heaviest in spring, but can be ever-bearing. Then we have Don Gilligley. Don Gilligley is the daughter of Hess, of Mr. Don Gilligley, who lived in La Jolla, planted a Hess pit maybe 60 years ago, 70 years ago, and up came this tree that makes fruit that looks like this. Big fruit, I mean, they're like that long. Seed down here. We think it's an A-type. I think it says. And then what happens on Don Gilligley is there's 2 crops per year on a mature tree. So it blooms in January, and the crop ripens between January and April. Then it blooms in May, and that crop ripens around April through August. So it's a nice one too. So I would say winter through early summer. So when we first grew it Don Gilligley, that was when Thanksgiving Day was a bad Santa Ana, blew our tree over, it was in a big box. 2 of the fruit fell off and go, okay, this is like, we were told April is when you should pick it. Here it is November. We didn't throw away, we just let them ripen, and we ate them in December, and they were good. We're going, okay, well, that's that. So even though they told us April and August, that was probably the last part of the harvest period on both crops. So Don Gilligley, you can probably pick it in December or leave it till April, and then the second crop is April through August. Because one of our customers brought us fruit in April, and then he brought us the second crop in August off the same tree. Real thin skin is a problem. And it's a little uneven ripening. Sometimes the top ripens last. I believe it's the top that ripens last and the bottom's already riper. So that's some of the issues with it, but it's excellent flavor. And it's precocious. We got 20 fruit on a second-year tree, so you can keep it small. That's one of our top sellers. Edronol. No one ever talked about Edronol, so we don't sell that many of them. It's a B type. It's excellent quality. The fruit's big. The tree is medium size. The trees look like they're going to get big, so I'm not sure, because some of the books literature says it's a small tree, but when we grew them, within 1 year they were over 8 foot tall and they had big leaves and big branches. I mean, the nice thing about that tree, the leaves were like this, the branches were real sturdy, and we had 4 fruit on its second year, and then a customer bought it. He had like 25 or so the third year. So it's fairly precocious too. That one is well. This information is on your sheet. It's also early. Esther. So let's do this a different way. There's another way I can hang this sheet up. So, because a lot of people like the Hass avocados. So we'll talk about Hass first and all its offspring. So you got the Hass, and Carmen is essentially the same thing, but can bloom more than once a year. But what happened was that they wanted to make Hass more productive, so they started working with daughters of Hass. And there's one here called Theo, and from Theo they got Gwen. So Gwen's one of our top performers. Gwen is the heaviest producing version of Hass ever seen. So Gwen's at the field station here at Irvine on their second year trees, which essentially are as old as these. They average 54 fruit per tree, which is a lot of fruit. The third year trees averaged 140, which is crazy productive. Not quite as good as Hass, but still better than most of the stuff you buy at the supermarket. A little bigger fruit than Hass. Not quite as dull or pebbly as Hass, so they're a little bigger, a little smoother. They tried it in the orchards for a few years, and the orchards came back and told them all these trees self-destruct from the fruit load. So they couldn't really do Gwen's at the farms. So Robert Lamb, who had his family has an avocado ranch in Camarillo, he planted 20,000 pits from his Gwen trees that he was growing there. So the daughters of Gwen are Gem, Surprise, Harvest, Luna. Now, Luna was in the news a few years ago. What was it, Times Magazine Product of the Year? I don't know, it's crazy. But Luna's another daughter of Gwen. So these are the things that the orchards plant now for the most part. Gem is an A, Surprise is a B. So a lot of the orchards plant Gem, Surprise, stuff like that. And they look like, well, here's the Gem. Excuse me, Gem, yeah. These two are Gems. This one's close to ripe. This one's still green. Surprise looks like this with a little ridge running on one side of the fruit. Surprise might actually be a little bigger. Well, Gem's pretty big fruit, but they're very productive trees. At my friend's orchard, one was 8 foot high and wide and had 300 fruits. So not as productive as the Gwen. The photo they had of the tree with 140 fruit on it, the tree was this tall. They had a picture of the researcher, unless he was 7 foot tall researcher, it was like at his chest level. totally loaded with 140 avocados on it. And that's just the average of those. And, they promoted Gwen originally as a dwarf, but they had suspicions. So they said they cut off all the fruit for 5 years on 5 trees, and all 5 trees broke 20 foot in 5 years. So without fruit load, they grow full size, but the fruit was keeping them this tall. So, that's kind of a dwarf for that reason. So these are all daughters of Gwen. Oh, another daughter of Hass is Don Gilligley. So we sell Gem and Surprise, which are the ones that most orchards are putting in for A and B, because they both look like Hass. I mean, I was at the grocery store last night. I'm going, well, some of these look like Hass, and some of these look like Gems because they're not as rough, or Lambs. There's a lot of, oh, we have a lamb. So the Lamb Ranch named one after themselves, of course. So there's the lamb, also known as Lamb Hass, but it is the daughter of Gwen, which is the granddaughter of Hass. And we do sell lamb too. Lamb's another A type. Lamb takes longer to ripen, so it's summer, fall, where most of these are spring. Yeah, most of those are spring.
So is Esther part of belong in that group?
Well, it's a hybrid though. So Esther is, so you can put Esther down there too. So Esther is apparently Hass crossed with Nabal.
And it's kind of iffy, the flavor. Not real consistent.
It's considered excellent, but when we grew it here, I didn't like it as much.
Okay.
But it's also a real heavy producer when it's young. Real heavy producer when it's young. So I think it had like 27 fruit on the first year. I have the research project back there somewhere.
It supposedly does well. I'm in Laguna Canyon, so it's near the coast.
You can get cold in there on some years.
It's been cold here lately.
Yeah. We had a customer in Laguna Canyon. They said they have to, well, this was 20 years ago, they had to empty their hose out every night or else the hose would burst from the ice. Okay, so that's your the Hass lineup that I know of. So if you like, now the Don Gilly is totally different, but most of these will eat like a Hass avocado. So we don't grow Hass, but we grow the improved Hass ones.
I'll tell the surprise.
Well, it's also considered small because it's a heavy producer. The orchard, I think they're about 5 years old now, maybe 6. They're hanging in right around 6-7 feet. They probably would be taller, but they were planted kind of close to these eucalyptus trees. So eucalyptus were hurting them. The eucalyptus are dying, so the surprise are starting to get going. So there's the Fuerte group. So Fuerte was brought up from Mexico in 1911, and it survived a bad frost during that time, so they called it Fuerte for strong. The original plant was in Altadena. I looked at it on Google Maps. The whole area is gone from the fire last year. I don't know if the tree was there when the fire went through or not. They do say avocado orchards put out fires pretty good because there's so much wet foliage in there. But anyway, Fuerte, not a good early producer, so they usually don't produce their second year. They usually produce their third, but they're not reliable. Because when I was a kid, my dad had 2 Fuertes in his yard. we bought with the house, and it was about a 25-foot by 20-foot tree, produced plenty of fruit. Planted another one when I was young, and 8 years later, it hadn't fruited yet. Beautiful plant. That year we moved, it had one fruit that wasn't ripe yet. So it's not a reliable producer. That's why they don't grow it in orchards more, but it is one of the top-rated fruits, taste-wise, of the avocados. Now, Fuerte was taken around the world at that time because it was such a good tasting fruit, and it's more productive when it's warm because it blooms real early, so that's one of the problems. It's an early bloomer. So when we had cold winters in the 1980s and 90s, it just wasn't producing at all because it blooms early. Same with Pinkerton, it blooms early. Now that it's, last 10 years, it's done a lot better, but the early bloom can be a big problem. But they took it to Israel, and in Israel, Fuerte, same problem, not a great producer. So from that, they made Edinger. Now, I don't have any Edingers this year as liners because no one knows what they are. But this is an Edinger here. And all my other Edingers, I didn't bring the other ones out because they're a little shorter, but they're all full of flowers. We see them bloom well in their second year to make a crop. So it's a more productive version of Fuerte. It's not quite as good as the original Fuerte, but it's still a good fruit. So that's Edinger. We're not sure of the genetics of Charwell, but Charwell, which is from Australia, might be one of the Fuerte offspring too. We're not sure. Sounds very Australian, but it actually was named after two guys, and that's their name. One was Will something. I can't remember what his last name was, but it does sound very Australian. So Charwell is one of the top-rated avocados too. It is a small tree, but it's not precocious. So when we grew it, it took 4 years to get first crop. It bloomed on its third, but didn't fruit till its fourth. It is quite good. The main reason we grow Charwell is because the fruit can hang on the tree for 10 months. So it can, it's at its best in spring, but you can pick it at late winter or leave it on the tree till the next January or so. So that's its claim to fame. We've had, my first Charwell I grew at my house, never got above 2 foot in height. Sometimes they're really, and I had customers tell me the same thing, it's really short.
It's real wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
The last one we grew here was about 12 foot at 4 years when it made its fruit.
That's a perfect gate.
Yeah.
To have something like that size.
So anyway, there's Charwell, and then Charwell was taken to Kona, Hawaii back in the 60s, but in Hawaii it didn't do much. So they took daughters of Charwell, and they developed one in Hawaii that was called Green Gold. I don't have any liners out there. We have a few plants left from last year. So we want to grow Green Gold to see how good it is because one of my employees says his neighbor has a Green Gold and they told him it's the best avocado they've ever eaten. So Green Gold is supposed to be improvement over Charwell. We'll see how it does here. I may pick up some of the liners again later this year because they still have them in stock. But so Green Gold is the daughter of Charwell. Now, the other one we'll talk about is Nabal. I don't have Nabal this year. People will probably ask, I'll probably pick it up again. But it is a big round one from Guatemala. Big fruit, 2 to 3 pound fruit, 2 pound fruit. And it is one of the best tasting avocados we've ever eaten. It's a heavy producer, but it's an alternate bearer. It's very alternate bearing, which means the tree is totally loaded 1 year, nothing next, totally loaded, nothing next. Its daughter, which is a little more uniform bearing, is Reed. And the fruit is very similar fruit. Big fruit, Both these are summer, fall. Both bloom late, which is helpful because they're blooming April through June so that the bees can get to them. So they're both heavy bearers because, you know, they often bloom after the citrus is done, you know, so they get in there. And then Esther is an offspring of Nabal also, crossed with Hass. Now we got this new one this year, but it's not a new one, it's from a long time ago. But it might be similar, it's called Nimlio. And they said it's the size of a softball. And it's a 3-pounder, so it's really big. And it's also excellent quality. And it's real thick skin on top. All these are thick skin. Like our customers would tell me, you cut a reed in half, make guacamole out of it, and serve it in its shell. The skin is so thick, it's like a ostrich egg shell. So Nimlio, so we want to grow Nimlio and see if it produces when it's small, because it normally grows tall, but we'll see what happens. If it can produce when it's small, that means you can keep it small. Huge fruit with a small seed. So that's the biggest avocado biggest fruit we sell. And it's also considered excellent. And then we've got Pinkerton, which is that weird shaped thing like Don Gilgly. So Pinkerton's a heavy producer, but when I grew it in the late 80s, we had this really cold winters where it dropped down into the 20s every, you know, at least be in the 30s every night, and the days would be in the 50s. No bees came to pollinate my Pinkerton. So in 3 years in my backyard, I had like 1 fruit. I'm going, okay, this is not worth it. Because it was blooming in December, January, and February, and we had such cold winters back then, there's just no bees. So I cut it down, but now Pinkerton, with the weather we're having these days, it's fine. So you gotta believe that when they first started bringing these avocados up, we had weather like we have right now. So in the night, you know, they said the hottest temperatures ever recorded in the US were in the 1930s. And we also know that when we moved to the Lake Forest in the 1960s, we looked up the history of that area. They had apricot trees there in the 19-teens because it was cold. And in the late 20s, they all stopped producing because it got hot. And then they had citrus there when we moved there in the 60s. So this weather pattern we're having, you know, it may not be unique. It may not be global warming, because these avocados were brought up to the United States from Mexico. You know, 1911 was the first one through the 20s and 30s, and a lot of the varieties were developed in the 50s and the 60s, and a lot of them were lately too. So Pinkerton's used to a warmer winter, and if you have that, that's a good small tree. I remember my uncle's tree was in his lawn. He topped it so you can walk underneath it, but all the fruit was hanging right about here. And I don't think it was taller than 15 foot. The best tasting fruit at the Irvine Field Station is Jan Boyce. It's not heads or tails above everything else, but it is the best. You know, when we eat them, because we eat all the really good ones, and it is the best. That's this one. I'll cut this open right after class, but Jan Boyce. So we have our big box tree out in the back of this building, which is again 2 years old. It had about 10 fruit on it. Is that one, and the fruit has been falling off. supposed to be March through July, but they've been falling off a little earlier. We actually ate one a couple months ago, but it's pretty much ripe now because I picked that 4 days ago and it's soft. So it's ready to go. Now and I don't know the heritage of Jan Boyce, but it is, so what makes it a little different is that a lot of avocados, you put them in your mouth and you don't taste much until you start chewing on it for a while. And then the aroma gets into your nose. You go, okay, that's really good. Jan Boyce, you get it close to your face, you're going, okay, I can already taste this thing. It's just got a little more aroma than the rest do. But yeah, it's awful good. Now the true Mexican type. So the Reed and the Nabal are true Guatemalans, and Nimlio are all 100% Guatemalan. Most avocados are hybrids between Guatemalan and Mexican. The true Mexicans that we sell, which are considered to be slightly more cold tolerant. So Guatemalans can't go much below 30. Mexicans, you probably can't go much below 20 before we have some major problems with the trees. Now, back in 1990, we hit 23 degrees for about 4 hours, 2 days in a row. That's our coldest temperatures ever recorded in California were 1990, December 23rd and 24th. San Francisco hit 18, Sacramento hit 15, I believe. Escondido hit 18. But our avocados, our young avocados like this froze to the dirt. They couldn't handle that at all. The Mexican ones would have done okay. In fact, I had a Mexico grande in my house, which was pretty much nothing happened to that one. But the young hybrid trees we had just froze to the dirt. And now the ground is warmer than pots are. So if you ever have a cold temperature issue, it's better to be in the ground than in a pot. But the true Mexicans that can handle cold the best, we have Mexicola Grande. So the regular Mexicolas are small fruit. They're usually, the average Mexicola avocado is about that big. The skin's very thin. If you have a Mexicola avocado, you don't try to peel it, you just eat the skin. The skin is thinner than a tomato skin. You won't notice it when you're eating it. Small seed, very nutty flavor. It's not as oily, but it's got a nice flavor to it. And they ripen in 5 or 6 months. So most of the Guatemalans take, well, the true Guatemalans take over 12 months to ripen. And then most of the hybrids take a year to ripen. The Mexicolas are ripe in October, November of the same year. So they ripen 5 or 6 months. So you got the Mexicola Grande, you got Stewart's. And bacon may have a little Guatemalan in it, I'm not positive. The bacon is mostly Mexican. So if you're in a colder area, the Central Valley, California, I've seen them grow bacons there. Now you don't want to be at the lowest parts of the Central Valley. You want to be on some of the side slopes because the cold air settles at the bottom. Our Mexico Grande, our Stewart, can be grown there. On the coastline, you can go further north, but they said the furthest north they have an actual orchard is right around San Luis Obispo, maybe just north of that, before you're taking too big a risk from the cold. I mean, we're so sorry about the East Coast United States right now because they had citrus being grown all the way into Georgia and the Carolinas now because the last 20 years have been so warm and they're really getting hit now. They thought global warming was true. Anyway, the other new one we got, so these are the Mexican types. They're all Bacon's a big fruit. Stewart and Mexico Grande are small purple fruit. Now another one we got in is Helen, and I don't know much about this one. It's another one of those real excellent big avocados. So we'll have to grow it and see that it's got thick skin, which is nice. July through October, so it's another late one. It's a B type also. So it's another good B type. Helen with 2 L's. I guess there's another avocado, Helen with 1 L. And then Holiday has been promoted by a lot. I don't have the liners this year. I might still bring them in. But Holiday is the shortest avocado tree known because the branches are vine-like. So University of California admits it's not a small tree. So when we've grown Holiday, it goes up the stake and then it just turns over and comes back down. It'll grow, 30 foot across on the ground, but it doesn't seem to have any strength at all. I do like the fruit on this. It was originally known as I believe XXR was the original name for that thing. So they brought me the fruit in 1980 and I liked it because to me it was, every time I eat a Holiday avocado, it's like a really firm stick of butter. It doesn't soften well, but it's like eating a firm stick of butter. I do like that one. And it is a short tree. It'd probably be great to espalier that thing on a fence. Now, this is a Holiday from last year, but I think they mislabeled it, or it's one of those weird scion problems where they took the scion off and strange part of the plant. Because this thing has leaves that are bigger than we're used to. Usually the leaves stay small like this. They don't grow this big. And the stems on this thing are really fat, which we're not used to. Because usually they're real vine-like. So I'm not sure what that thing is. So we'll probably keep it around and see what happens. But it's not the typical Holiday that we see. Holiday usually looks a lot more like Stewart with the small leaves that are cut.
So I brought a Holiday 5 years ago from here. And no complaints, but it has been a stinker in terms of growing. So I gave it one more year last year and it didn't produce any fruit. So I cut it down at the base. Do you just leave it and see if it'll grow back again, or do you just pull it out and find something else?
Well, if it's above the graft, it'll grow back.
I don't know if those bugs graft.
If you're probably 80 foot above, you cut it, you're fine. Off the ground.
2 inches.
You got this.
Okay, let's see if I missed anything here. Oh, there's another avocado called Queen,
Pull the roots out.
which is another really big avocado. This tree, we've tried growing it. I believe it's true Guatemalan. Doesn't say here if it is. One of our customers brought in a fruit last year that weighed 3 pounds. We know it can get up to 3 pounds. We tried growing the tree ourselves. First year I tried, I put them in a 15-gallon and they died that winter. Next year I put them in a 15-gallon, a nice 5-gallon, put them in a 15-gallon. It died that winter too. We're going, okay, what's wrong with this tree? So they seem to be a little delicate, the queens, like they're too tropical. We finally got one in a box and it set 2 fruit and then they fell off. So we go, okay, this thing's already 15 foot tall. We just sold it. So Queen seems to take some time to develop strength to make fruit. But, they're big, impressive fruit. But a lot of the big avocados don't ripen very evenly. We found that with Queen, with the ones that the customer brought to us, they were rotten on one end and ripe on the other. So, okay, I think I got all the varieties talked about. Anything else?
Was there a one called an XX3?
That's Holiday.
Okay, got renamed it.
Right.
Another question about water. Since water is so expensive, I want to make sure I put it where you can get to it. The old school was, on most plants, you water at the drip line. That's the same with these trees. The drip line can change as the tree grows.
Yeah, you want to keep most of the, well, I think they say in commercial orchard, they want to at least water 50% of the drip line of the tree. At least 50%. At the orchard I'm at, they put 3 or 4 sprays underneath, from the trunk outwards.
Right.
So they're covering probably a little more than 60% of that, maybe 2/3 when they water their trees. Not that they're the local experts, but that's what they do.
That's how they do it.
So,
How about organic matter or compost on top? How thick of a
It's-
layer should you have on top of the?
well, if you use leaves, you can go really deep because the air can get through the leaves. Like I was mentioned earlier, one of my friends was in Guatemala. They dug through 5 foot of avocado leaves before they hit the ground. I mean, it would be nice to go, a foot deep. I mean, in my last house I lived at, that I owned, I threw everything underneath my avocado trees. So if I was pruning my hedges, I threw all that stuff underneath them. Whatever I was doing, I just threw it underneath them. I wanted to build up that layer of mulch as thick as I can get it.
Should I be composting them first? Can I put citrus tree clippings and rotten fruit? The citrus won't kill the bacteria in the ground.
No, that should be fine.
They use citrus oil to kill termites. It's okay under my tree.
You mean the orange oil?
Or, yeah, I know, the advertisement.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we had no problems.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else today?
When's the best time of the year to trim the top of the tree off?
Well, if you stump them, they said winter.
Even though there's tons of buds on it.
Well, that's when the tree's at its strongest. So if you're gonna top the tree. Now I did my bacon in late winter because I picked all the fruit first,
Okay.
and then I cut the tree down when the crop was off, and then again it waited 3 months and started growing again.
Okay. So my reed has got fruit on it right now. Wait till the fruit is picked then?
Well, that's going to be summer.
Okay.
So you might just want to start, the top of the tree usually has the least amount of fruit up there, so you can just cut it down to the height you want it to be without sacrificing too much. Just watch the temperature, because the branches you uncover will be subject to sunburn. If it's been in the darkness all this time, it's only exposed to 80-degree sunlight, it may burn. It's because of that. So yeah, when they stump in the winter, they often paint the stumps white, so they don't burn.
So I do have a brain though. 5 pounds, and you go through this within a year, and then from here you go into either a bigger one or into the ground.
Yeah, it's nice to go on the ground when they're this big, but yeah, they can still go on the ground any size you want. But just know that the bigger they are when you go in the ground, the more you have to modify your soil so you don't lose the bottom roots. Because those roots are used to being real close to the surface where they can breathe.
If we're gonna keep in a container, then the next size, then we would bring this to the next size.
Well, you can go to as big as you want right now.
Okay.
I mean,
Can I keep it here?
You can put these in a 24-inch box and they'll grow just fine. They'll be a little slower because the box is cooler than the black plastic.
Okay.
But, if the soil is right, there's no problem. Now, the compost soil, you get any other brand of potting soil, except for maybe a few from Sunshine or Fox Farm has one really good. Now, most companies make one really good potting soil where they don't have any wood in them. But you put this in a potting soil with wood, it'll turn yellow in a week. That's all it takes. Most potting soils are really, really bad on plants. I mean, I don't know if you want to keep going, but what we heard about potting soil companies is their test plant to make sure that their potting soil works. Tomato plants. Because tomato plants, the only plant we know of that'll grow in a compost pile. So they make their soil out of compost. You put a tomato plant in there, that's fine. Put anything else in there, it struggles. Because that compost is wanting to eat it up. That's the role, compost pile is supposed to destroy what's in it. It's not supposed to help it grow. So most potting soils will destroy an avocado root system and it'll just eat it up.
You think, we're seeing the increase in the organic soils. Do you think it's because of our new laws here as far as, we have to recycle green waste?
Well, yeah, one problem is the organic, whatever that official organics is, because what they told us is if you want to make sure your plant is being grown organically so you can advertise it, you can't use real dirt. They're going like, what's wrong? They say you have to use recycled organic matter to grow the plant if you want to call it organic.
Yeah.
Which is, that's stupid. I mean, that's not just crime, that's stupid. Because this is real dirt.
Yeah.
And they told us we had to use recycled organic, or else you couldn't call it organic. So we see these, there's like 5, there may not be even in the left, but there was like 5 organic nurseries in the entire United States, and we looked at their plants, they're all rotting because they're in recycled wood.
An organic means a lot of different things. I mean, even certification of it is different from.
Yeah, a lot of
state
it's
to state.
totally unnatural because as you chop up a tree in little pieces, there's no tree in the world that gets chopped up after it dies.
So when you plant the hole, you dig the hole, you still have the 1 hour, fill the hole with water, come back 1 hour, it's drained, or you guys have drainage soil below
It
it.
doesn't have to. We don't say that much anymore because we grow our own avocados. Now, if we got one from another grower, yeah, you'd have to do that because it's going to rot. It has a high tendency to rot because there's organic matter in the dirt.
Okay.
But with our stuff,
Well, I use your soil
right,
to put it in.
Right.
But I still test it to make sure that it.
well, that's ideal to make sure that the hole drains within an hour, or it's actually within a day. Because soil does tend to drain slowly. I think actual Orange County soil, they say, drains about 1/8 of an inch an hour. So it takes some time.
I'm outside of the slope, so it drains well enough that's there. I have regular compost, which is composed of pine tree and other stuff that is like 4 inches on top of the ground. Any issue?
No, that's great. Yeah, all the compost belongs above the soil where the roots aren't.
Oh, yeah, clearly.
So, yes,
The buzz phrase I've seen on packaged soil was forest products.
right.
That was the scary. The rest of it looked good. If I see forest products, I knew that's trash left over from making plywood.
Right.
2x4s.
Or shingles or whatnot.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just something we're throwing away years ago, now they're trying to sell it.
Yeah, plants can grow anything for a while, but yeah, most potting soils, I would not put anything that was not an annual in it. So, okay, any other questions? All right. I'm gonna cut this thing open if anyone wants to try and get my knife.
I want to try one, man. I got one of those. Oh, okay. Yeah. What's that, Fuerte you gave us?
No, I'm.
Yeah, no, not from my garden. From the farmer's market. Oh, but I had a Fuerte tree. Yeah, I have a Fuerte tree that was about 6 feet tall. I took it off from him and give it to my neighbors. We tried to grow the Fuerte from seed. So it worked well. I said, you know what, I'm surprised. But he planted a very short fence, so I thought maybe it's going to set up. I get pick. By the way, I have some Fuerte seed in the car. Okay. Yeah.
And when they talk about this ingredients, they
So is this mix good for any type of plant? Yeah. But if you plant your plants in the ground, pots. Yeah. If you plant in pots, you need that. Yeah. So you should have a lot more.
But reminded me, I bought one of these 2 years ago. And I was putting out a whole bunch of flowers. And it's about 7 feet tall. So I got some.
Just 2 years, huh?
2 years.
This is a short well?
This is Jan Boyce. It's got acidity in there, I can taste it. It's got a bite. It's got a bite, it's good.
I have to spray the plants with,
Looking forward to my tree.
Right, right. Oh, Oh, yeah, I didn't mention that. Once a week while they're going to pick. Yeah, these have nothing. That's a good avocado. It's really good.
You use a stack of chair film?
Oh, well, my employees do that thing.
I work at a school, so it's kind of.
Yeah, I don't know, I'll give you my number. I mean,
Which one is this one?
That's from the supermarket. That's a West Indies, so this slim cottle, they don't have any oil. The taste really isn't all that good.
7.5.
This is caramel.
We're doing my dad's are.
I don't.
I have a
Started sending fruit last year, so it's been hanging for almost a year. To pick it, we March and September. Wait until September or
Well, the longer you leave it on, this year, the orchard's picking theirs right now, but they're not ready. They're shriveling up. They're doing this, which means they're not ready yet.
mine is inside the shop, but it's got.
Right,
I want you to get.
right. Just leave, you pick one, see how it goes.